Welcome back to Sportsbeat. Today is July 14th, and we are recording episode number 21. And I am joined, as always, by our producer, Dave Warner. What's going on?
Not too much. How you doing?
Not too bad. I saw the car out front. It's already there, so I don't think we're going to get the drive.
Oh, the drive-by noise? Yeah. Unless he starts it up and moves it where he usually parks
which would be really kind of apropos for this episode because so we have a great episode for you today. We have two. We got
one of those little wicked boosted cars out there, you know.
And when it goes by, you can hear it, so it's always always a fun time. But our two guests today, we are joined on our StreamYard video line by TylerHead, who is the communications manager at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and Kyle Stephens, who is a NASCAR photographer with the racing experts in KAS Photography. What's going on?
Another day in the life. How's it going for you?
Nah, you know, we're here in Little Falls, and I think you both are in better weather and in better climates and having probably more fun than we are here.
It's a little warmer here, I think. A little warmer than the last time.
I don't know.
Today was 82 and really humid and looks really crappy. You guys probably have better sun and.
I think Old Spice and Axe are doing plenty of business regardless of where you are.
Oh, that's true. So just as like kind of a life update, since the last time we talked, congratulations to you, Tyler, on getting married.
Thank you. Yes, there we go. There's the proof.
There's the proof.
Yes. She had an extra year to think about it, and she still went through with it. So, you know, that's got to be a good sign.
And Kyle, you were able to get there without, missing the second flight.
Yeah, that was an experience, and I felt so bad because I didn't want to add any more stress to that than I had to. It was bad, but I got there. I was there for the wedding, so I guess that's all that matters.
The important bits were done.
Correct.
And
he just missed a rehearsal dinner, and we just left a plate of food sitting there getting cold, and we said this is where Kyle would be if he knew how to make it to the airport.
That's correct.
You see, now you found a business venture there, Dave. You need to rent out Hector.
Oh, that's true.
so Hector,
poor Tyler doesn't know what we're talking about, but he doesn't want to go there.
We'll talk later. You'll enjoy the Hector story. So let's jump right in. I know a couple weeks ago when we were doing our press box segments, and a little dated, but it's still news because it's still going to filter in. Jeff Gordon announced that he is leaving the booth and he's going back into basically front office. What do you guys make of that? Because everybody's kind of dubbing him as the heir apparent for Hendricks. Would you agree with that? What impact does that have? Can Clint Boyer actually man the booth on his own without Jeff there?
I'll let Kyle go first.
I was going to say, we all kind of have seen it coming, especially with, Jeff getting a lifetime contract and then getting into Hendrick as, part owner and stuff like that it was kind of just writing on the wall at this point and just how long it was going to take before he got there. With you bringing up Clint Boyer in the booth, I think he can handle himself. I think he's a very, very good commentator. Yeah. Also brings a lot to the table, obviously from a driver's perspective as well. But I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for them to bring a third person in. Who that person is, I have no idea. But, because obviously it was just Jeff and Mike for, what was it, 1, 2, 3 years. And, I think that's going to be a possibility for them to bring somebody else in as well. It's just when, who, no idea.
Yeah, Jeff's had an ownership stake in Hendrick Motorsports for, I believe, decades at this point. Pretty early on, he got roped in with a lifetime deal to drive for Hendrick. And not too long after, he ended up getting a stake in the company. So, obviously, there's been some complaints amongst fans and even amongst drivers. I remember Brad Keselowski getting a bit upset with Jeff Gordon pretty early on in his tenure in the booth, saying, hey, Jeff's pointing out something on my car that has competitive implications because he still has that stake in Hendrick. And I think at the end of the day, that competition side, being a part of Hendrick growing and continue to stay competitive on the racetrack, which obviously this year, doing about as well as you could ever hope to be doing, but that's about what the standard for Hendrick has been over the duration of that organization's time in the sport. I think that's always been the number one priority for Gordon on the professional side of things since he stepped away from racing and hung up the helmet. So, Going to miss his insight in the booth because obviously he was a very successful driver and pretty freshly removed from the car, so had a lot of insight that was relevant to what drivers are working with today. But Clint Boyer is a great personality and is even fresher out of the car, so can really speak to especially some of the different racing packages that these guys are having to maneuver through from one race to the next. And is just a very candid guy, right? Always has something witty and off the wall to say, but it always seems to be fun. But I'm with Kyle. I really hope that they seize the opportunity to put a third person in the booth, whether they find somebody new that's not been doing play-by-play commentary traditionally, but maybe it's somebody from their pre-race show like a Jamie McMurray. Or if they reach back into their back pocket and pull back out Larry McReynolds, he put out a tweet shortly after this news came out saying, "Hey, I'm not opposed to going to the racetrack, not one iota." And I think that'd make a lot of fans happy and bring a lot of balance to that booth, having obviously Mike Joy, the top echelon of play-by-play people, Clint Boyer from the driver's perspective, and Larry McReynolds, an infinitely charismatic crew chief to help tell the full story of NASCAR events on Fox.
Yeah, and I would agree with you too on the Clint Boyer. He's definitely a personality. He always, when it was just Jeff and Mike for, I think it was the 1 or 2 seasons or 3, however long it was in that stretch of time, it was still good, but it was very to the point. There wasn't much extra,
Right.
I think Clint was able to keep the content level high, keep the broadcasting level high, but add a little layer of, fun. He brought back like the court jester's role, but able to do it competently, and
Right.
his ability to tie it all together works really well, which as a more casual fan than the both of you are, given that you're embedded in the sport in your own areas, and me, I'm just watching on, Saturdays and Sundays here and there. It's nice to be able to sit back and laugh for a couple hours while you're watching a race.
Right, and I feel like that's what DW did
Yeah.
for a while, and he kind of had a wit about him that either people liked or didn't like, but that's kind of the role that I see Clint Boyer filling.
I miss DW calling races when they start. That used to make my Sunday, but Ty.
Yes, and I was just going to agree with Kyle. I mean, DW, when he was in his prime, was very good at being able to do that. He'd make you laugh in one moment, then he'd do a heel turn and shed new light and give you a new perspective and show everybody from the average casual fan to somebody who's been a part of the sport or ingratiated in this sport for decades. Everybody seeing what was happening on the track in a new way, and that's something that I'm seeing a bit from Clint Boyer already in that first season that he did this year, which is pretty impressive because before Darrell got into the Fox booth in 2001, infamously for their first season, he had dabbled with doing commentary before that. So it wasn't a, dropped into the fire sort of thing for him. Whereas with Clint, he had a much shallower well to draw from, but I thought he did a pretty fantastic job nonetheless.
And making a quick jump over to the other big news that we talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. Chip sold his whole team. What do you think? I mean, the comment, and I wish I had my notes with me, that the comment he made was, he's still in IndyCar, he's still in Formula One, or all the other models that he's in, but I'm just not in NASCAR. What effect does that have? Long term, short term?
Well, short term, I mean, it makes this silly season even sillier than it already was. And with the introduction of the next gen car next year, and all of the teams that are either buying in or buying in harder for 2022, this just throws a wrench in everything that was happening as far as where drivers were going to fall. Suddenly, Ross Chastain is looking for a ride. Suddenly, Kurt Busch, who, yes, there's rumors about where he might end up, and there was rumors that he wasn't going to be sticking with Chip Ganassi Racing. Well, suddenly that's not an option for him. He's going to have to land at one of those other places, which means that there will inevitably be one less seat for somebody like a Ross or a Matt DiBenedetto or an up and coming driver like maybe a Harrison Burton to fill as all of these things fall into place. So, but more broadly, just looking at somebody like Chip Ganassi, who's involved in many forms of motorsports, as you mentioned, having him bought out of NASCAR is just it's something that really makes your head whip around, and you find yourself saying, "How in the heck did that happen?" And what really stuck out to me when all of that came out was Chip saying, "My team wasn't for sale. I got an offer I couldn't refuse."
Yeah.
And boy, somewhere there's a fly on the wall that knows what the number was that got Chip Ganassi to sell his team, but it's got to be a big number. And it's a shame that that team's not going to stick around, because I mean, there, I have a lot of memories just in my time watching actively NASCAR, all of the successes or at least moments that Chip Ganassi Racing has been a part of. And, that's coming to a conclusion this year. Thankfully, at our race this past weekend, Kurt Busch got a big win. So we know that there will be at least one last title push for Chip Ganassi Racing with at least that number 1 car.
Yeah, and I mean, at least from my perspective is, and this is just my own personal opinion, but I don't think he's gone forever. He tends to do this if you look over his sports or his racing teams, especially with IMSA. I mean, he was the head or the forefront of the Ford program with the GT for as long as Ford kept in it. Got rid of the team, had no IMSA team, and then just brought one back this year. So, with his track record with doing that, and like I said, that's just IMSA, but IMSA is actually owned by NASCAR. So, I don't think that this is going to be a forever thing, especially like Tyler alluded to, is he got an offer he couldn't refuse. And then there's a lot of talk and rumors going around that there might be a new manufacturer coming in the sport eventually. And I could honestly see Chip Ganassi being the forefront of a new manufacturer coming in. I believe in IndyCar, and Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he runs Honda, where he runs Chevy in, NASCAR. That could be a correlation somewhere to where, he very well could bring Honda into the sport. I don't know. Like I said, that's something that's just my own personal thought, but I don't think he's going to be gone forever.
I'll say something that will be a hurdle to that reintroduction into the sport is the charter system that we have right now, and how much people are buying into the sport at the moment. There's been talk of charters selling, and a charter being something that guarantees a car an entry into the race. They won't miss the show if there's more than 40 entries into the race. They're guaranteed to start that race. Charters going for north of $10 million. And that's a lot of money too. Now, one, Chip almost assuredly pocketed a good chunk of money because he just sold his team, and the reason why that happened was the need for charters for Justin Marks, Pitbull, and that Trackhouse Racing team. But two, when you look at, hey, does he, Kyle mentions a new manufacturer coming into the sport. A lot of people figure that's going to happen in conjunction with a reworked engine platform for the sport, which I believe is 2023 or 2024 is currently being targeted. So in 2 to 3 years, is the value of the charter higher? Have people been receiving a return on that investment and there's more value there? Is it going to be more expensive to buy back into the sport? Or is Chip going to be able to, pocket a bit of that money that he just got and then buy in with some to spare? I think that remains to be seen.
And going back to the charter thing, you also in the same time there where Chip was selling and charters were becoming more of a topic of conversation, you had Dale Earnhardt Jr. come in and saying, thought about getting back in, but price was just too high. No way I'm going to afford it. We're going to stick down here with the Xfinity cars and team that we already have.
Yeah, and I think I'm curious to see how that lands, because I'm seeing some chatter of that, wavering from one side to the next. I mean, I think Dale Jr. is well off to be a bit guarded in how he invests his money.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think that draw of making your own cup team, and don't forget, the thing that made him go from his father's team to Hendrick Motorsports back when he was a driver, among other things, was he wanted ownership stake. He wanted to be at the helm of what was his father's company, but ultimately a team that is competing in the Cup Series. I'd be interested to see if his point of view on that evolves and if he's willing to separate himself from more of his money for the sake of doing that, because there are people that have arguably less reason to be as passionate about NASCAR as Dale Earnhardt Jr. is, that are investing in this sport right now. You think of Michael Jordan, you think of Pitbull, and on the list goes. I mean, GMS Racing, which has dabbled in, the trucks in the Xfinity Series, and, has since walked back its Xfinity Series program, but has continued to compete at those lower levels, came out several weeks ago and said, yeah, we're going to be Cup racing next year. So to me, it's a bit hard to imagine that Dale Earnhardt Jr. isn't going to eventually graduate his program to the Cup level. I just don't know if he thinks there's going to be a better opportunity than what comes in this next 12 months.
Right.
It's going to be interesting because, and like you said, he definitely he has the money to do it. It's just, the long-term financial decision and what it costs to run a team, not including just the charter, but all the other metrics that go into it. And that's was kind of what his press statement was. Somebody had followed up with him and it got answered somehow, whether it be through him or publicist or whoever, but it wasn't just the charter. It's now the charter is X plus all the other things that go into keeping a team moving.
Right.
And that's got to be taken into account. I can't imagine, it's not just going and buying tires and gas and saying we're going racing this weekend, boys. It's, it's everything that you see and what you guys have talked about before.
Right.
Well, that's why this silly season is one of the silliest yet.
Right. No, 100%.
Yeah. So Tyler, you guys hosted this last week. You had the Xfinity and the Cup. What'd you see? Any good moments? You had already kind of Busch brothers, both. I think you had posted. Both got wins. And so what else happened? What happened behind the scenes?
Well, behind the scenes, we had a very hot Saturday, and we had some power challenges. So that was fun to navigate because, you think about any time in the summer, you're going to want the air conditioning to be working, let alone when you're outside for several hours and then retreating inside to like a suite or trying to go under concourse and catch some fresh air. You're going to want the power to be working. So that was an interesting thing on Saturday behind the scenes. Also an interesting thing was, and this isn't so much behind the scenes, but it was, not on a broadcast, was in the media center. Kyle Busch obviously always has a very distinct opinion on just about everything that he cares to have an opinion on. And so this weekend was the final weekend on not only the current asphalt at Atlanta Motor Speedway, of which I have a chunk sitting right here, but it was also the last with 24 degrees of banking, which is what Atlanta Motor Speedway has had for 61 years at this point. They're currently working on the track, removing safer barriers, and they're going to start digging it up most likely next week, getting that going. They're going to increase the banking from 24 to 28 degrees over the next several months, and it's going to be an all-new Atlanta next year. Now, suffice it to say, that is something that is a point of interest for a lot of drivers, is the way that I'm phrasing it, because they really love Atlanta Motor Speedway as it is. So they have opinions on what it's becoming. Kyle Busch, not all that happy about what we're doing. And so when he was in the media center talking about how he had won the last real true Xfinity Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, he ended up declaring that he wanted a piece of the asphalt. Fast forward 24 hours, his brother wins the Cup race. And as we've gone through the event, we've had an example of why the track does need to be reworked in one way or another, shown for everybody when a piece of the asphalt came up out of the track. So Kurt Busch comes into the media center after his victory. He does all of his media obligations. And by the way, I will point out, since a lot of the NASCAR traveling media seem to have glossed over it, Kurt Busch is perfectly fine with us doing what we're doing to our track, even though he just won the last race on it, is the winningest active driver at the track, and arguably has the most reason to say, no, keep this. This works for me. He's good with us doing what we're doing to mix things up. But
nice.
nonetheless, he got that piece of asphalt that came up out of the track. That was handed to him right as he finished his media obligations. So that was a cool moment. I don't know that we've gotten Kyle Busch a piece of the asphalt just yet, but I know our charity's planning to sell them, so maybe he can purchase one for the benefit of children in the Atlanta area.
That's a good plug. Well done. Kyle, you want to jump in on that
Yeah,
one?
I mean, I like what they're doing. I mean, as Tyler growing up, anytime we would talk about any type of track reconfiguration, I would always say add banking. I don't mind the addition of the banking. What kind of, I guess, disappoints me a little bit is the narrowing of the race surface in the corners. I still wish they would keep it at the current 55. But, you know, they're at least trying to do something different, and you can't knock them for that at all. You know, but like I said, if I would like the racing surface to be just as wide as it is now with the increased banking. But I'm guessing with how the addition of the banking works, and Tyler, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that a wider or keeping the current width of the racing surface is possible.
So I wouldn't say it's not possible, but it would be much more difficult and could come with its own consequences for things like sight lines. So there's two ways that you can add banking to the track. Okay. So we've got our current, let's see, there we go. We got our current slab of asphalt, and you can either, boy, this is really hard. It's like mirrored.
just go for it.
All right. So you got the bottom, right? And you've got the top. Now, either you can increase the height of the top, and that's going to give you a sharper angle, a higher degree of banking, or you can leave the top where it is and cut in from the bottom, and you'll have a sharper degree of banking. Now, it's a lot easier to carve into what's already there, which is the second option, than it is to increase the height of the banking, increase, you know, how much you've got layered there. So we're coming in from the bottom, and that's why the width of the corners is going from roughly 55 feet to about 40 feet. Now, I totally understand where Kyle's coming from. And like, as a racing purist, you know, you always want a wider racetrack, more room for cars to, you know, search for grip, etc. That being said, I think there's a bit of a misconception more broadly about what we mean when we say the track is going to get narrower, because I'm seeing a lot of people throwing out Darlington as an example of what they're expecting. And this is not going to be Darlington. Darlington, notoriously one of the narrowest, you know, toughest to drive racetracks on the circuit, where you don't really so much race side by side with each other so much as you just focus on not hitting the wall, and whoever does that best is usually on top at the end of the day. We are going from being a very wide racetrack to a still quite wide racetrack. At 40 feet, that's in the ballpark of what Daytona is. Obviously, they're able to go 3 wide and sometimes 4 wide at Daytona, and in the same ballpark as Charlotte Motor Speedway too. And I don't think you're going to find anybody who's going to raise their hand and say, yeah, when we go to Charlotte Motor Speedway, we can only run one lane because it's not wide enough. So there's racing challenges from track to track, but 40 feet of width is going to be enough to make some racing happen. The big variable is, you know, one, what is NASCAR going to bring to the track from a package perspective? And two, how does that next gen car perform? But I think it's going to be very interesting to see.
On that point, we're going to do a quick commercial break. You two stick around, and we're going to get into looking at the season so far, second half of the season, and next gen cars, and wrap up. But we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Visit My Little Falls and stay connected with the latest news, information, and events in the city and the area. Our mission is to generate interest in the community and connect residents in a more meaningful way by facilitating deeper conversations about how these stories will shape the future of the Mohawk Valley. Join thousands of weekly visitors who stay up to date with feature stories, interviews, videos, our event calendar, and print publication, the Mohawk Valley Express. It's about timely local news for the community, keeping citizens citizens informed about important issues, telling about the people who live and work here, and giving locally owned businesses the opportunity to reach a very targeted audience of locals and tourists alike. It's a whole new form of media-rich content developed specifically for today's mobile lifestyle and listeners. You can download our iOS app in the iTunes Store, listen to our country music streaming radio station, or sign up for a weekly newsletter. Stop by today at mylittlefalls.com. You'll be glad you did.
And we're back. So, sticking with NASCAR, because that's where we are. We've got. Oh, I thought you were looking at me for a note that I missed something and I screwed up because,
No.
I am prone to doing that.
I look at you occasionally.
I'm sorry. Oh, Jesus. And so we have Tyler and Kyle here. So far you have a piece of the track and you can get some for your charity event. So that's great. And probably out of my realm of charity, but hopefully Kyle Busch can get one. That would be really funny if he won the last Xfinity. His brother got one because of, Father Time. And then his brother has to go buy one in a charity auction. Come on. That'd be funny though.
I'm not saying that's the way that it's playing out. I'm just saying if all else fails, he'll have that option available to him.
I mean, I know somebody who doesn't have a piece of track.
Well, let me see.
That piece behind him can be split.
I'm a little yes. Now I don't know how we would split it.
I have means of doing it. I have means.
Is the way you want to do it, but I do have a piece over there on the ground that might be able to make its way to North Carolina later this week.
Oh, okay.
So,
slide back again.
There you go.
It's over there.
There you go.
There we go.
I figured that was just the doorstop.
I should have been a meteorologist at some point. I'd be better at like pointing while I'm looking at myself on a screen. Yeah.
And the weather over here and this little part of
Right.
Well, you can see in El Paso it's 78 degrees.
and he'd be pointing to Pittsburgh.
Wait, where are we? What? Back to you in the studio, and that's it. So we're a little over halfway through the race season, which you keep calling a silly season, which just makes me kind of laugh.
So distinction. So the race for the championship, the 36 races, that is the season. Silly season is notoriously what everybody calls the time between, when one driver has a ride for one season and then for the next season when they either re-up with their team or they are with a new team, because often the deals that get made are out of left field, are wonky, and sometimes straight up silly. So you call it silly season.
I want to in on that. Just, I don't know what, but we get a good sponsor. We can be on ESPN once a week or something like that. I mean, if they can do that with Barstool, putting them in the back of a van sitting in Boston, we're good.
We'll come up with something.
Yeah.
Throw a sponsor on a race car and you're good.
There you go. There we go. I wonder how much like a decal, like a bumper sticker
that you can't read.
Yeah, you can't read. Couple $100,000.
I tell you what, you might want to invest in the racetrack instead. That might be more within reach.
So for both of you in your respected areas of the sport, what do you see so far this season? What's worked, what hasn't? Give us your thoughts up to this point.
A lot of Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, no shit.
A lot of Hendrick Motorsports, but I'll leave it at that, and Tyler can go ahead and I'll wrap up after him.
Well, what I would say is that's the easy answer, is that Hendrick Motorsports has been very good. Chevrolet has been very good. But I think as the season has continued, when I look at the Hendrick camp, yes, William Byron got a win early in the season. And Alex Bowman quietly has 3 wins. And Chase Elliott has gotten his wins at road courses and probably will notch a couple more before we get into the playoffs. But when you look at consistently performing from week to week to week on every type of racetrack, William Byron's kind of in that conversation because he had that top 10 streak earlier in the year, but he hasn't been up there leading the laps, running in that top 3, top 5 as consistently as Kyle Larson has. I mean, Kyle Larson really, there's the field, then there's Hendrick Motorsports, then there's Kyle Larson. But as I say that, it's appeared that Joe Gibbs Racing, and more specifically the 18 and Kyle Busch, have narrowed up that gap. And obviously, we just saw Kurt Busch steal one. Well, not really steal one, but come out of nowhere seemingly to not just win the race at Atlanta, but do it in pretty convincing fashion, led a lot of laps. So outside of Kyle Larson, I think what the season has really had is a lot of parity. Before he went on his streak of 3 and 1 blown tire away from 4 wins in a row, everybody was talking about, hey, are we going to have more than 16 winners by the time we reach the playoffs? Now, there's 5 races remaining, and I believe we have 12 winners. So I think that we're safe from that regard. But we have had several winners, and we do have a couple of wild card races in the mix. I look at Watkins Glen as a place that has been on the schedule for quite some time where somebody different could win, especially when you look at people like Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick that are perennial favorites throughout their careers, and they haven't yet notched one this year. The Indianapolis road course, I don't know what to expect from there. Obviously, I'm going to be looking at Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott because of how well they've run on the road courses so far this year.
Yep.
But that's a circuit that everybody's going to be introduced to for the first time, and everybody's going to be trying to get as close to the mark off the truck as possible and have very little time to adjust if they've missed the mark. That's an opportunity for somebody else to squeak through and get themselves a win. And picking a real dark horse at that point, I'd look at Chase Briscoe, who went ahead and won that race in the Xfinity Series last year when they ran the one other time that stock cars have gone around that circuit. And then, of course, you have Daytona to wrap up the regular season. So I don't think we get to 16 winners, but there's a lot of parity entering the playoffs. And I'll say, outside of Michigan, I don't think that we're going to get a lot of indications of what to truly expect once you get into the playoffs, because it's a lot of road courses. New Hampshire is a very unique track. And obviously Daytona is a complete wild card. When you get into the playoffs at this point, I think you're going to be wondering who's going to perform when you get to tracks like Las Vegas and Darlington and Texas and so on, leading up into Phoenix.
And, you know, even to extend that a little bit on what Tyler said, you know, obviously him and I are a little biased, or we all are, for Watkins Glen, because, you know, it's 2.5 hours away from home.
Right.
But remember, they didn't race at Watkins Glen last year. So, you know, you got to throw that into it just a little bit. And I'm not sure, Tyler, did they run the high downforce package in 2019 there?
They ran in 2018. When they came back in 2019, I believe it was low downforce.
Okay, because obviously this year it's going to be low downforce again. So, you know, at least they have a little bit of a, you know, playbook to come off of. But, you know, that very well could be a crapshoot for anybody. Just, you know, not racing there last year and, you know, just throwing that into the mix a little bit too.
Well, you look at something like the races at Atlanta. We just ran the second one of the season. They ran in March. Over the course of 4 months, the players that are involved in trying to win the race, there's a lot of overlap there, but the ones that are stepping away from the field and the ones that are hanging on trying to figure out what's the right thing to do changed completely in 4 months. Now, part of that is track characteristics, cooler in the spring, warmer in the summer. But a lot of that is also nothing stays static in motorsports. Teams are always learning. They're always rethinking what their approach can be to try to get a 10th, a 100th, a 1,000th of a second faster when they get back to the track. So when you think about 2 years, especially 2 years that's going to have seen several more road course races in between than at any other point in NASCAR's history, or at least in the modern era history, there's a lot of opportunity for that Watkins Glen race to go very differently since the last time they went there.
Right. And I mean, it's obviously hard to count out, you know, Chase Elliott, because, you know, he's just been dominant on all road courses, but Watkins Glen in general the past few years, you know, but, you know, like Tyler said, it's very easy, you know, for somebody else to grab a win. I mean, you even got somebody like AJ Allmendinger that isn't running a, you know, full-time car, that is just running the road courses for a new to Cup team next year. That very well could sneak in, win, and just kind of ruin a spot for somebody else. Because granted, he's not going to be in the playoffs, but that's a win that somebody else could have used to get in.
And when we look at the playoff picture right now, it's with Kurt Busch winning this past weekend, it really throws a lot of guys into, they're not mathematically in must-win territory, but practically they're in must-win territory. Looking at Chris Buescher, looking at Matt DiBenedetto, and on down the list, they are more than one race at this point outside of the cutoff line as far as points go. So if they're going to leapfrog their way into the playoffs over Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon, who are on the bubble right now, they're most likely going to have to win, or they're going to have to hope that the 3 and the 8 car have a lot of trouble in a short period of time. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can pull out of their hats, if anything, particularly when you get to Daytona and realistically everybody has a shot. I would say, looking at the Indy Road Course and Watkins Glen, because it's 2.5 hours from home, I would keep an eye on Tyler Reddick to be a little bit of an upset winner. And if it were to happen, looking back on how he's done at the road courses this season, it should not be that much of a surprise to anybody if he does do it. He was very fast at COTA, won the pole there, and was very respectable even in the rain. Was very fast at Road America when they went there a couple weeks ago. He's done a very good job at his increasing his road course prowess. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to take advantage of that situation I was talking about with the Indy road course, with it being so fresh for everybody, or get into Watkins Glen and, take advantage of a track that really rewards charging a corner, shortening up the braking zone as much as you can and charging through. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to aggressively drive a car. And we know that Tyler Reddick is good at doing that.
Right.
And moving through, you've mentioned some of the people that are in there. Who are you each, or maybe what teams are you each watching as we get into playoffs? Who do you think has the best chance right now? I know it's total guessing and asking you to use a crystal ball, which doesn't exist anywhere, but.
I was just going to say, I have a good feeling that, the 21 car will be in, Matt DiBenedetto, and he could easily be a sleeper on the road courses too, because he kind of showed what he could actually do at Road America a few weeks ago. He led quite a few laps that everybody was shocked by, and I mean, I was surprised to see him up front too, and he held his own. So, I have a feeling they'll get in. Are they going to be a real contender in the playoffs? Probably not. But, that's my pick, at least, that I feel like he's going to get in.
I would. So looking at DiBenedetto, I agree with what you say about Road America. But I just think there's too many other talented road course racers that, hey, he can get a solid finish, but I would not expect him to get a win. But looking at how he's performed at super speedways lately, obviously there's a lot of luck that plays into it, but we saw last year with William Byron, one of the more desperate drivers in the field was willing to make some of the more desperate, aggressive moves to get himself into the front at the end of that race. And if Matt DiBenedetto doesn't peel off a win at Watkins Glen or Indianapolis, or this weekend at New Hampshire or in Michigan in some way, shape, or form, he's probably going to be among the most desperate people in that field at Daytona, considering that not only is he going to most likely be below the playoff cut line by a significant chunk, but he's also racing for his the future of his career. A lot of rumors swirling about who's going to land where in that 21 car, and his name is not often cited as the one that's going to be in that car in 2022 and beyond. So racing to impress, obviously, throughout the remainder of the season, looking for his next opportunity.
Right.
I'd be keeping an eye on him at a super speedway like Daytona.
In side note, quick, I'm going to veer off just a little bit, but speaking of Penske, of all of that is, obviously it's been all pretty much but confirmed that Keselowski's leaving. Now that opens up a seat at Penske, and also the 21 car is kind of a Penske offshoot. So does DiBenedetto stay in the 21 car and Austin Cindric just goes to the 2?
It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. I'll say that I would have a foregone conclusion that Austin Cindric occupies one of those 2 seats. It's already been stated that the original plan was for Cindric to be in the 21, and DiBenedetto was going to be on watch to figure out where his next ride was going to be. When everybody saw this Brad Keselowski news, they thought, oh, okay, well, now DiBenedetto is going to be all right. But there's a lot of rumors swirling that it might be an up-and-coming name from the Xfinity Series that might make its way into one of those available rides and leave DiBenedetto looking for somewhere else to go. I believe the original question was who to keep an eye on in the playoffs. The easy answer is going to be Kyle Larson. So I'll veer away from that, and I'll point to Martin Truex Jr., who has not looked stellar the last 6 weeks, I'd say. After he just stomped the field at Darlington in front of Kyle and I, he's really, really gone cold. But you look at Martinsville, Phoenix, and Darlington, the 3 tracks where he has a victory this year, those all appear in the playoffs and all will be critical to whoever is going to end up winning the championship, in particular Martinsville and Phoenix. So he's somebody that I keep an eye on, especially considering that usually when all the chips are on the table and everything's on the line, he tends to show up and be a part of the conversation at the very least. So I would expect them to heat back up, especially when they go back to those kinds of tracks that he's already seen success on this year.
Right.
And jumping into I guess the last topic I had, and I know this is more hitting you, Kyle, is the next gen cars. A lot of things have been said, and there is a lot of talk out there about possible issues with the car, and
just in the past week.
Yeah, go for it, because I know this is kind of you.
Yeah, I mean, like you told me away from this is, you told me I talked about it 3 months ago,
right?
And now it's just coming up. I think NASCAR, and most of this is my own personal opinion. Tyler and I have actually talked about it at length as well. About how I get my information, stuff like that. But I'm nervous. I really am. There's been rumors that there's been a few test sessions that drivers have opted out of because they don't feel safe. And again, those are at least just rumors that I've heard. Whether the rumors and the stories are true that the crash test dummy was killed and all this stuff, I can't confirm, deny that. I have no idea. But just from what I've learned is the car isn't as safe as the current one. Obviously NASCAR is going to come out with a press release that says, yeah, we're working on it, blah, 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 but they're not going to go into detail, and they're going to kind of, overshadow things. And that's kind of my belief is, I don't want to say it's a conspiracy theory or stuff like that, but, there's been facts that I've been told that, drivers don't feel safe, and some of the accidents they've had in the new car are a lot worse than an accident that they would have had in the current car, and that it hurts a lot more. It's more of an impact. And now it's just getting brought to light. So, like I said, it makes me nervous. And I think it kind of just, again, personal opinion is NASCAR is more worried about an on-track product and trying too hard to get fans back in the seats rather than focusing on safety right now. And obviously somebody brought it to light, and again, there's been stories published about it, and they put their press release out because they had to. And I'm interested what happens over the next few months. I saw a rumor that they might delay the car again. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'll let Tyler kind of put his opinion out there as well.
Well, I don't think I'm going to wade too much into my opinion. I'll just say that where NASCAR is on it, it's what NASCAR is saying has happened is a lot of speculation and possibly, some room left for that speculation to be made based on a lack of communication from their end. And where they are is we have not killed any crash test dummies. We did a crash test at Talladega, and it looks like it did about as we would want it to. But that's been sent off to an independent board to review that and compile all the results and present that to the industry. Where my opinion would come in here is, I think, less so from a safety standpoint. And obviously, if there's something that's found in all that compiled data that says, hey, we are not even, hey, we are many steps away from where we need to be, but we are a step behind where we currently are. I think that would be something that would give pause to the entire industry, because safety is important to everybody that competes. And Denny Hamlin said right in our media center this weekend, obviously the bar is how safe we are right now. There's no reason to, take a look at the numbers and say, okay, well, we're going to be some percentage of that. Like it needs to be that or better.
Right.
But I would say looking at the way that this is playing out, I would be less concerned from a fan standpoint about the safety elements of it. That'll most likely be worked out. I'd be more concerned about the supply of everything that is needed to get these cars out onto the track. At this point, the rollout of this car has already been delayed a year due to COVID. And as we've seen since the pandemic began across almost all industries, supply chains have been stressed and, completely stretched beyond their capabilities, or if not stretched beyond their capabilities, have been, suppressed in their ability to meet demand. And that's present within the NASCAR industry as well, especially with the shift that is going from teams preparing cars and building components to a lot of that coming from vendors, in particular one vendor that would create a lot of the elements, Dallara. So as they're waiting for these safety results to come back, there's been a bit of an expectation coming into this year that by now there'd be some organizational tests happening. And obviously we are still on the making sure we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's element of the safety, and we haven't moved on to the point where teams are receiving parts and assembling cars. So from a fan standpoint, I'd be paying more attention to that element. But I'll also butt end that by saying that NASCAR on that front says we will be competing this car at Daytona next year. So take from that what you will.
Right. And I mean, just to extend that a little bit too, is, I mean, the teams are getting frustrated because they don't have those parts. They can't build a new car, and what happens if it keeps getting a little more delayed because they're working on things. And I was shocked when NASCAR came out when they did and said, yeah, we're done with R&D. And it's like, that was quick. But, obviously it's been in the works for a few years and stuff like that. But, it's just, I still just have the opinion that they're just trying too hard to put an on-track product that will bring fans back, and they're kind of just over what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of have a lot of oversight on things. And like I said, that's just my own opinion, but I'm also, as I've shared with Tyler a little bit, kind of stuck in the past of how NASCAR used to be too, which everybody wants it to go back to an extent, but it's just, I'm hopeful that I'm wrong. I really am, but it makes me nervous with some of the things I've been told about how safe this car isn't. And I understand that they're trying to be cost effective and save money for teams and stuff like that to try to get more teams back in the sport and stuff like that. I understand that. But, like I said, it has me concerned.
And it's going to be interesting as an off season too, because I know, Tyler, when you were on back in March talking about everything that goes on, it's not just you show up, you roll out a car and you go in there. There's, pit crew. And then, that's something we talked about kind of extensively. And all those metrics have to be figured out as well. So I would say on this note, stay tuned, because it's going to be definitely a off season, because you've got factors and variables that are beyond the control of the sport and the industry entirely right now, with getting parts, getting chips, making sure fabrication is done. Plus they're currently running a season, and NASCAR has a pretty short off season by regular standard sports anyway. It's not 6 months long and you pick up. It's not, 17, 18 games of NFL and then 4 weeks of playoff and we got a Super Bowl kind of thing. You guys stretch it out. It's going to be a very short year with a lot of learning curve behind the scenes that casual fans like myself are not going to see. It's going to be, okay, Cup Series is over. We're in off season. Okay, Daytona's coming up. Super Bowl just happened, and we see the Super Bowl happen, and they'll have the thing for Daytona coming up in 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what it is. There's going to be a lot of friggin' things that are going to have to happen in that period of time, from what both of you were saying.
Yes, I would expect at this point. It was already going to be a very busy and very diligent turnaround with the timeline that everybody had in mind coming into this year. There's going to be a lot of activity at a lot of racetracks outside of Saturdays and Sundays when we get into the fall and winter. That's for sure.
No, 100%. I agree with that. And, is when these teams start getting the parts, is you got to remember too, is they're not just building one car. Take Hendrick that has 4 cup teams, and then however many cars they want to build per team, for whether that's a short track car, road course car, super speedway, intermediate, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen before Daytona. And Daytona, yes, is kind of far away, but it's not.
Any closing thoughts from each of you as we wrap this up as we get towards it?
Well, I wouldn't be doing my part as an employee of Atlanta Motor Speedway if I didn't say there's a lot of thrilling on-track action to see the rest of this year, but there's going to be an all-new Atlanta Motor Speedway in 2022, and it's going to be quite the show. So if you find yourself wanting to take a little vacation, take a little trip, it's an easy flight into Hartsfield-Jackson Airport down here in Atlanta, and then a short drive down to the track. So there you go.
Well done, sir. And that's why they pay you those big dollars, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why you've got a piece of the track sitting right behind you.
I get paid in asphalt. That's what it is.
No, you don't get Bitcoin, you get asphalt. Nice. Kyle?
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting few months to the wrap up of this season to the beginning of next. And, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, obviously. With just the new tracks on the schedule to playoffs to, the new car, and there's going to be a lot going on, and it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And, it's definitely going to be interesting. That's for sure. And, I'll be home for Watkins Glen. So, I'm excited to get back home and, indulge in, obviously the Valley favorites, whether that's, pizza, calzones, all that fun stuff. So chicken riggies, but I make my own. So, but I'm excited to get back home, do that, and then get back down to Watkins Glen because this will be technically year 14 in a row. I don't count last year because I obviously wasn't a thing. So, I've been going for 14 years in a row. Don't want to break that streak.
Coming up here, Tyler, are you coming up for Watkins Glen, or are you not making that one?
I don't believe I'm going to be able to make that one. I've burned up a lot of time off between getting married, and then later this year it'll be celebrating being married in Las Vegas. So between those two things, I won't be able to come up. But I was going to say to Kyle, if you could bring back some primos one way or another, that'd be great.
I can do that.
And did I see? And we'll end here, Kyle. Did I see that you're running the Boilermaker?
I am. This will be number 6 for me.
You're crazy.
Maybe
someday I'll do it. Now that I'm 200 pounds smaller than I was.
I'll throw a plug out there for the other event I'm doing, but
Go for it.
the CNY Stair Climb. That's going to be at the end of September in Utica. So right. I will be home for that as well. I am the reigning Riggy Cook-Off champion, so I have to come home and defend my title. So, but it's definitely a good cause, in honor of those that were killed in 9/11. So this will be my 3rd or 4th one, I believe. So that's one of the other events that I come home for as well.
Nice. Guys, we'll have to do this again. This was a blast.
100%.
You both know what you're talking about, and it's kick-ass. So we'll have to
an extent.
Well, yeah, to a better extent than I can sit here and drone on. And nobody wants to listen to me. So Dave sure as hell doesn't, because he does it enough. So
yeah,
I'm known for droning on.
Aren't we all?
Back in college, we were known for droning on too. I think constitutional law. So we will end there. I will just say in the press box segment quickly, we had big news in the Diamond Dogs. You guys will appreciate this because not happening all the time. Jimmy Joyce, who's a current Diamond Dog player, was drafted this week and got drafted by the Mariners, and he found out while he was here. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, wow. Yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. Yep. So see, local doing great things. You guys doing great things where you are coming from this area. So we will see you guys all next week. We'll talk soon when you guys come up individually. And if you're tuning in from Podcast World, we'll talk to you next week.